everyone, I'm Jen. I work at the local community food center. Today we're going to be talking about healthy school lunches. So this may be your first session of our Mighty Meals. I'm Jen, and you'll be seeing me every other session, and you'll be seeing my colleague Chris, who's a trained chef. I am just the food logistics person at the local community food center. So I bring in the food and I kind of send it out to food banks, community meals providers, and to schools often, and then through our produce box program. So we deliver produce boxes every week to people in Stratford and St. Mary's. And then on Fridays, I run a low-cost market where we sell all of this produce and some frozen meats and eggs and a couple extra things every Friday, 11:30 a.m. till 1 p.m. if you happen to want to come into the center. And I would encourage you, if you've never been in, to come in and maybe talk to one of the staff and see if you can get a tour. It's a great place to be. So we would usually be doing this in the center in person, but this is virtual. And so you're in my kitchen. And who am I? Well, I'm Jen, like I said, and I'm a nutritionist, but I think more importantly, I'm a mom of 3 kids, so I have lots of experience as a home cook. So like I said, today we're going to be doing healthy school lunches, but this is going to be like a pretty good session just to kind of talk about batch cooking and prep. So we're going to spend probably an hour to an hour and a half making a few different things, and they'll last you for the whole week. So whether you like taking hot lunches or cold lunches, this will kind of take you into different areas, and it's not just your basic sandwiches and Lunchables and things like that. But we'll get lots of veggies into your kids, lots of healthy proteins and fiber, and keep them fueled for their full school day. So first I wanted to roast a bunch of vegetables. So those you can add to salads. You can eat them cold or hot. And as you can see, we've got a bunch of cut up vegetables already. I've got some red onions, sweet potatoes, peppers, some Brussels sprouts, mushrooms, and zucchini. You can use whatever you have. We'll be sending out the meal box for you, and I encourage you to try those vegetables even if you've never used them or thought that you didn't like them before. But whatever you have on hand, and kind of combine them with the other vegetables that will cook at relatively similar pace. So I've got them in 2 trays because I didn't want to overload them. When you're roasting vegetables, you want to keep them on a pretty thin layer, like almost one layer, so that they don't steam and get mushy, but you kind of want them to caramelize on the bottom. So we've got the oven set at 400 degrees, and these go in for about 30 to 40 minutes. Halfway through, we'll mix them up, stir them around a little bit, and spread them out again, and probably switch, because I've got 2 trays, and they'll switch racks in the oven. And I've already got a whole butternut squash in the oven already, and a whole pie pumpkin. They're on sale. They're 99 cents. So I thought we could make a really nice squash, like a butternut squash and pumpkin soup. So I know it's kind of daunting sometimes to have to peel and chop up all of those squash. So if you just throw them in the oven whole, you cook the whole thing and then let it cool a little bit, you'll be able to peel off the outside and scoop out the seeds, and it's already basically pureed and cooked for you. So that takes out a lot of steps. Okay, so we're gonna get these into the oven. What I want to do is season our vegetables generously with salt, and I'm gonna do pepper, and whatever kind of herbs you like, dried herbs you have on hand. I have some marjoram. You could use dried basil or oregano, or leave it plain. I just wanted to throw in another layer of flavor. And then a very little drizzle of vinegar. I have red wine vinegar. I wanted to use balsamic, and you don't have to do this either. It just kind of makes it a little bit tastier. And then a very healthy drizzle of olive oil. especially with those mushrooms and zucchini, like they just suck up all that oil. So you want to get everything really nicely coated. You don't have to worry about mixing this up at this point. I'm going to mix it up halfway through. So now we'll get these into the oven. I have a pan here underneath the pumpkin and the butternut squash, just so that if there's any dripping, then it doesn't burn and stick to the bottom of your oven. So while your veggies are roasting, I'm going to put on a pot of lentils. I have some brown lentils, and I just wanted to demonstrate how easy it is to cook lentils. I know sometimes it's a little bit intimidating thinking about dried beans and lentils, but lentils are so good for you. They're so versatile. You can, once they're cooked, you can eat them cold or hot. You can just add them in. You can kind of like sneak them into pasta sauce even, and nobody even notices, but you're just adding so much nutrition, protein and fiber especially. So what I'm gonna do is turn that on to high, and we're gonna bring the lentils up to a boil, and then they simmer for about 20 minutes or until they're cooked through, but not mushy. Season our water really well. It's also important. You could add other kind of aromatics in here if you wanted to really season your lentils, but I'm just gonna do a bunch of salt, and I didn't have to soak these overnight. They're just covered by about 2 inches in water. If you see that the water is starting to boil off before they're cooked, then just add a little bit more water. It's very simple. And then what I'm gonna do in this pot, I'm gonna get our squash soup going. So because I'm cooking the squash in the oven, I need to cook my garlic and onion. That's what I'm gonna add to it. It's gonna be like a pretty simple pumpkin squash soup. So I'm going to give these a bit of a dice and kind of go through, not all the way to the end. I've left the little root end on to kind of keep all of the layers of the onion together while you're chopping it. So I slice through this way, then I'm going to slice through down the top, and then you're going to get a nice dice. I'm not doing mine too small because I'm going to use a hand blender to puree the soup at the end. If you don't have a hand blender, you can just use a regular blender, or you can even use a food processor. I've got just some butter in the bottom of the pot. That's what I was going to saute the onions and garlic in. You can use olive oil or whatever cooking fat you like to use. And then I'm going to keep this really, really simple. So it's just onion, garlic as our aromatics. And then the squash and the pumpkin are going to go in. I'm going to use some chicken stock as the liquid, as well as some coconut milk. And, and the other liquid was apple cider. So I like the tartness of the apple cider, a little bit of sweetness as well. And then in terms of herbs that you can use, you can go so many different directions. You can make since we're doing the coconut milk, you could do like a Thai style if you had like some Thai curry paste to add in there. I've done a really good one that you can buy like a jar of jerk seasoning. I really like spice blends, by the way, especially when it comes to just jazzing up your basic things, and then you can play around with different flavors. So like a jerk spice seasoning that's spicy, but depending on what your family likes. Classic combination with squashes, sage. which is really nice at this time of year too, but you can just leave it plain too if you'd like. Just gonna mince up my garlic a little bit. So this kind of prep, where we spend an hour or so in the kitchen for making soup or cooking off a bunch of vegetables all at once, is just like a great thing to do if you have some free time, usually on a Sunday afternoon or a Sunday evening. And then when you get it all done, then all you really have to worry about is like a couple minutes each morning or the night before school to actually assemble your lunches. So if you put the thought and effort in before, you'll be so grateful by the end of the week that you still have lunches that are healthy and you're not just grabbing whatever on the go. Because it's easy to resort to those convenience foods, but we all know they're not usually as healthy. It's just satisfying to make your own meals. Okay, so I'm just going to cook these until like the onion's translucent and the garlic is cooked through. It doesn't take very long. And if my squash isn't finished cooking, then I'll just turn this off and set it aside, and then we'll come back to it. Okay, so while this stuff is going, we're going to make hummus. And the reason I wanted to show you hummus was because you can use it in so many different ways. It can be a spread on a sandwich, or like I'm going to show you in our roasted veggie wrap, or you can just send it as is, and it's a dip for crackers or veggies or whatever. So it's a very versatile ingredient, and I think it's super easy to make. And it's very inexpensive. If you buy the dried chickpeas, it's even more inexpensive, even less expensive. But the canned chickpeas are really easy to use as well. So that's what I've got here. I've got some canned chickpeas. You can have tahini. So it's as basic as this. Like, the ingredients are chickpeas, tahini, which is sesame seed paste. If your kids can't take sesame seeds to school because of an allergy or whatever, then just omit it. You don't need to do it, but that's kind of what gives it that like hummusy kind of flavor. Garlic, lemon, and olive oil, and then salt and pepper. So I hope you have a food processor, but if you don't, you can use a blender as well. I want to show you a little trick where you don't have to even chop up your garlic, you just throw it into the food processor. So this is what you start with. Turn your food processor on, and then put in your garlic straight into the chute while it's on. And it chops up your garlic for you. Just like that, and then you don't need to worry about it. And then if you added it in after you put the chickpeas in, you'd probably have like one big chunk of garlic that some lucky person will get, and you don't really want to do that. So in go the chickpeas. I'm gonna do a scoop, like a couple tablespoons of tahini. And if you're doing this in a blender, it might find it a little bit more challenging. So you might find you have to add a little bit more liquid to it in the form of even the cooking liquid from the chickpeas, or water, olive oil, lemon juice. So I'm just going to do the juice of 1 lemon. Take out some of the visible seeds so they don't go right in. If you have a little strainer, you can, juice it over top of a strainer. I'll show you what I like to do. I just take a fork and I'll kind of squeeze it, kind of get a lot of the juices going, and then squeeze it over my hand so I catch some of those seeds that you don't see before they go in. And some salt and pepper, so that gets blended in. Don't do too much because you'll taste it as we go, and then at the end you'll want to see if you need to add more salt. Better to not add too much at the beginning because you can't take it away. And some olive oil. Obviously I'm not measuring things, I just kind of go by feel, but that's, you'd be safe with about 1/4 cup of olive oil. Then we're going to turn this back on again. So you just kind of watch it and you can see it'll come together, but you really want like a really nice smooth paste. Some people like it more liquidy and some people like it thick, so it's based on your preference. I'm going to keep going. This is still pretty thick, and so I'm going to add some water to this. When you add the liquid, you can turn it back on again and pour it down the chute. Okay, let's see what that looks like. That looks pretty good. It's maybe a little bit thinner than I would like, but I think it'll be fine. And if you got it too thin, you accidentally added too much liquid. If you have more chickpeas, you can add more chickpeas, or if you have more tahini, you can add more. But that looks pretty good. So now give it a little taste. I think I would just add a little bit more salt, but I think it's really good. You want to taste the lemon and the garlic, but you want it to be pretty balanced out. Then just give it a blend again. Okay, yum. That's really good. Okay, so we got our hummus, and that makes, like that wasn't even a full cup or a full can of chickpeas that I used. It was like 3/4 of a can, and you can see that it makes quite a bit. I've got about 2 full cups of hummus, and that should last you the week. So I'm gonna set this aside and we'll be coming back and using this later. Okay, so I checked on my pumpkin and my squash. The squash was denser, so it's still in the oven cooking, but I pulled out the pumpkin and I wanted to show you. You'll pierce it with a fork and you'll see it'll go in very easily and come out easily. So when you take it out, let it cool a little bit first, and then you'll see how easy it is to just peel off the skin. And I have scooped out the seeds from the center after I cut it in half, and I'm actually going to clean those seeds up, and I will toast them in a low oven with some salt, and there'll be another little snack. So this 99-cent pumpkin that I got is going a long way. So that's half of the pumpkin peeled. This guy, I'm gonna roughly chop it, throw it in with our onions and garlic, and then we'll add some liquids to it, bring it up to a boil and simmer it for a little bit just to get the flavors all mixed together, and then we'll puree it with our hand blender. And we pulled out our roasted veggies, so you can see everything got a little bit definitely cooked through. You'll want to test them, and then a little bit caramelized on the outside. So I'm just letting them cool in their pans, and then we can use them cold or reheat them, but we'll use them for our hummus and veggie wrap later. All right, I'm gonna give this a little stir, then we're gonna add our liquid. Okay, I think I'm gonna put about 1 cup of apple cider. I'm doing apple cider because this is what's in season right now, and I'm gonna give you all a jug of apple cider that I picked up at the produce auction in Elmira. So we were selling this in our market as well, just because it's a seasonal thing. So not quite a full cup. You don't need a whole lot, but it does add some nice flavor. And then I've got some chicken stock back here. This is some homemade stuff, so there's quite a bit of fat in mine. You can use store-bought, or you can use vegetable stock, or you can use water, whatever you have on hand. And then just for a little extra creaminess, I'm going to add in half a can of coconut milk. Like I said, this is what I have on hand, so that's why. But you can do a whole can. If you eat regular dairy, you can put in milk or cream, or even some yogurt. So I'm going to let this come up to a boil and simmer it for a little bit, and then I will blend it with a small hummus or a small wrap. So I spread my hummus on the bottom of the wrap. I'm just going to chop up my vegetables just a little bit smaller so that we can roll them in. Then you get a little bite of everything. So I've just gone really simple with this wrap. This is just hummus and the roasted veggies that are nicely seasoned. If you have some sprouts or Some feta cheese would be good. Lettuce, tomatoes, whatever you like to put into your wrap. So I've laid them across lengthwise, and then you fold in the edges just a little bit to contain everything. And you're going to fold up the edge that's away from you, and you're going to fold it in towards you, kind of keeping everything in the center. You kind of use your fingers to keep it into the middle. Just keep rolling until it's kind of rolled in on itself. This one is it's a small little wrap. You can get them in different sizes, but I think that's a pretty nice lunch size wrap. So what you can do is wrap this up in some cellophane and keep it in the refrigerator like this. And then in the morning, if you wanted to cut it in half or into rolls or whatever, then it would be kind of solid for you, but I'll show you what it looks like. So this is not quite together because it hasn't really set. My veggies were actually still pretty warm. But once you cool it, it'll be easier to cut through. There you have simple hummus and roasted veggie wrap. So our soup is simmering. It's been simmering for a little while now. I'm going to turn it off. And if you're using a hand blender, I love that because we don't need to dirty any more dishes. But if you're going to use a regular blender or put it in a food processor, I would cool it a little bit because it's pretty dangerous to handle the boiled soup. So this is my hand blender. You're just going to go in and puree it as much or as little as you like. I'm going to make mine like a real puree. Okay, that looks very nicely blended to me. Oh, there's another chunk. That's all right. So now you'll just want to taste it, see if it's seasoned enough. Add some more salt if you need to. That's pretty good. So when you're packing hot lunches for kids or yourself, you want to make sure you bring whatever it is that whatever you're packing. So if it's soup, for instance, you're going to bring that up to a boil again before you pack it. The other thing you're going to do with your thermos is boil some water and pour boiling water into your thermos to heat it up as much as you can. And then you're going to pour out the boiling water after it's set for about a minute, and then put your really hot soup in there, seal it up tight, and make sure your container is like an appropriate size of container for the amount of food that your little one's going to eat. So in this case, this is a smaller thermos. I've seen ones like this, but the reason for that is if you have a small child who's going to eat a small amount of soup, you want to make sure that it's pretty much full so that it stays hot enough for them for a few hours. Okay, so my lentils took about 20 minutes to cook. We just want to make sure that they're soft, but they're not all mushy. So keep testing them before the 20 minutes is up. And they taste really good. And all I'm going to do is add some fresh vegetables, and maybe some of the roasted veggies. And I cut them fairly small so that they mix in really nicely with the small lentils. And then whatever kind of dressing you like to put on it. I always like to do just lemon juice and olive oil is kind of my favorite thing. I'll throw in some ground cumin. We'll do some of these roasted red peppers over here and some zucchini and red onion. And then I like the fresh cucumber. If you've got some fresh herbs like cilantro or mint or basil around, throw that in there. Just squeeze some lemon juice, some salt and pepper, and then some olive oil. Mix it up, and then that'll last in your refrigerator for about 5 days. And the hummus will be about the same, like 5 to 7 days. It should last in the refrigerator, so you'll be able to get a good school week's worth of lunches out of that. So I might be new to you, and a lot of these ideas might be really new to you or somewhat new or just kind of scary, but don't be afraid. You're going to get all the ingredients, all of the recipes in the boxes, but if you do have any questions, don't be afraid to reach out to me. I have added my contact information in the boxes as well, so you can email me or call me anytime, and I'd be happy to help you out when you're doing this in real time. Okay, thanks for watching. See you next time.
Is it good?